Welcome to maintenance training for CosaTron air systems. If you've walked into your building and it doesn't smell quite right, your CosaTron systems may have a problem. The following presentation will help you diagnose and solve all CosaTron problems on your system. I'm using the CU650 for this presentation, but this presentation can be used on all prior systems and CosaTron generator models. To gain access into the CU650 electronics, remove this cover by removing the 4 screws. This allows you access to the electronics, and if you'll notice that on the bottom of the lid there's a plunger. This is to actuate the micro switch. If you have anything like this phenolic screw or a screwdriver, you can push it right into here. This will actuate the micro switch and provide the power to the internal electronics so that you can troubleshoot. You'll know if the CosaTron's working or not by the front panel lights. There's 2 lights. They'll be lit on if the basic circuitry is functioning. Troubleshooting these systems comes in 3 sections. Either you have bad incoming power, there's a problem with the generator itself, or there's a problem out at the electrode set, or the wires that supply the energy to the screen set from the generator. When you first start to do this, and if you approach the generator and both lights are off, the first thing to do is to check to see if you have incoming power rated at what the generator is supposed to be hooked up to. It can be anywhere from 100 to 240 volts on the incoming power. All power after that through the transformer internally will be 110 going to all the other circuits. Or if your circuit breaker has been actuated, punch the post back in. This will or should reset the circuit breaker and restore incoming power. If it does not, you probably have problems with your incoming power. Now, the method for troubleshooting these systems between the generator can and the electrodes involves 6 different conditions of the high voltage and the high frequency. These 6 conditions are outlined in the troubleshooting guide, with references to where you should go further into the troubleshooting guide as directed by these first 6 conditions. These 6 conditions will direct you to either a problem with the high voltage module, a high frequency generator board, the cables, problems at the screen set, or any accessories which may be hooked up to the CosaTron systems. If your incoming power is okay and both lights on the front panel are on, the next thing to do is to hook a test kit up to the screens to see what values of high voltage and high frequency you have. This is a CosaTron test kit. There are a number of different models that have been available in the past. The current model is the 7700. At this point, we are going to find out what the high voltage and high frequency levels are at our screen set. You've approached your CosaTron system and the lights are on, but you have problems with odors. The first thing you do is turn the power off on the system. And then you hook up your test kit to the screen set. The screen in the front is the high voltage, the screen in the back is the high frequency. The red wire hooks up to the high voltage screen in the front, the black wire to the high frequency screen right under the grid, and also you must make sure that your test kit is grounded to the same system ground of the system. With your test kit hooked up to the CosaTron system, restore power. Look at your test kit, and if the readings are between 3 and 500 for your high frequency, you're at the proper value range. If the high voltage is between 22 and 29,000, you're within the operating range of it also. With our CosaTron system on, monitoring it from our test kit, we can see that the high frequency is actually low, with the high voltage at the proper value. Restoration of the high frequency to between 500 to 800 will restore CosaTron system to performance values that it's supposed to be. The high frequency can be adjusted by a nickel-sized adjustment on the high frequency board, internally on the board itself. And I will go ahead and make an adjustment here. put it above the range. At this point, CosaTron system performance has been restored, and your CosaTron systems should perform as they did when you first bought them. With our test kit hooked up to the screens, we can see that our high voltage is actually low and our high frequency is actually okay. So what we need to do is adjust the high voltage up. There's a small potentiometer encapsulated on the high voltage module. And if you look down in, there's a slot where you can get your screwdriver. And if you turn the screw, you can actually get the high voltage to come up to the level you want it. 24.9 is a nominal position, and performance has been restored to the CosaTron system. If you've come up to your CosaTron system and the HV or the HF light are out, you have a problem with one of the circuits internal to the CU650. The high voltage is serviced by a high voltage module, which is independently fused, and if that fuse glows, then the high voltage module will not function and there will be no high voltage output. And the high voltage module will need to be replaced. If there's a problem with your HF section, with this light out indicating it is a problem, the first thing to look at is the fuse to see if it's okay. If the fuse is still good, but the light is still out, then what you want to do is remove the high frequency wire off the board. This removes the load from the high frequency generator. This should restore the light if the oscillator is still functioning. If the oscillator is not functioning and the fuse is still good, the board is bad and needs to be sent back to CosaTron for repair. If you pulled the wire off the board and the high frequency light comes on and the fuse is still good, and when you put the wire back on the tab, it goes out, there's probably a problem between the generator and the electrode set. This would involve troubleshooting problems with the cable, connections at the screen set, or conditions of contamination on the plastic surfaces which hold the screen set isolated from its surroundings. If you've determined that there's a lot of contamination at the screen set, the next thing to do is to get a clean white rag, and I use 90% isopropyl alcohol. The alcohol content in it is so high that it will dissipate off the screens and the surrounding areas that you touch, and you won't have to worry about water remaining on any of the metal surfaces causing corrosion. If you've determined that your problems are out at the screen set, when going to the electrode set, examine the condition of the plastic surfaces of the Teflon insulators and the gray PVC track which holds the system screen set out. The insulators should be white and clean around the entire circumference of their body on all four, or if your screen has 6 of these holding it up. Also, the gray PVC track will collect dust and contamination because this contamination exists in the air that goes through the system. So periodically, you will have to clean the gray PVC track and the white Teflon insulators. This will keep your electrodes separate, potentially, voltage-wise, and you will eliminate any problems which could be caused by contaminants in these areas. If at the screens you measured no high voltage, the next thing you want to do is to go internal into the unit and pull apart this connector. If pulling apart this connector brings this high voltage light on, then you have a problem at the screen set with the high voltage screen somehow being shorted to ground. It's a very simple arrangement with the high voltage wire coming in and with the electrode as it is. The only thing that could possibly cause the high voltage to be shorted out is if something that's external to the system is actually hitting the frame somewhere. A pitot tube, which is an air pressure tube, can cause this, and I've actually seen this before. Other things are filters, which have metal interior pieces being sucked into the screen set and actually bonding between the high voltage in ground or the HF, taking the high voltage out and possibly the high frequency section with it. Elimination of this will probably restore your CosaTron high voltage